Change is badly needed in Ireland and Sinn Féin claims to offer it. So why does their MO seem to be doubling down on every failed policy that the government throws out? This is Ben Scallon and you're watching Gript Media. No matter what party you support or what your personal political beliefs are, it's very hard to argue with the fact that Irish society is not working the way it's currently being run, with soaring house prices, brutal hospital waiting lists, rising crime rates, a crippling national debt, suffering rural and fishing communities, and much more. These are objectively not the fruits of a national strategy that's functioning correctly, and many of these problems are at least a decade old with no sign of improvement on the horizon. No doubt even the government leaders, if you got them drunk in private with no cameras around, would admit that this does not look good to your average punter. Deep down in their heart of hearts, they have to know why the traditional parties have been steadily losing ground in the polls. So with that said, it's not hard to imagine why many voters would want a big political change, nor is it hard to understand why a party that promised that change would do very well at the polls. And that is the cue for a party like Sinn Féin, the self-styled party of change, to enter stage right.
We are the party of change. Leading change can block change. They can delay change. To block the change, the leading change, desire change, let's change. The appetite for change is time for change. The change for change.
In recent opinion polls, they certainly seem to have reaped the rewards of that message, pulling well ahead of other parties in the eyes of the general public. But is this success earned? At this point, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of change does Sinn Féin actually represent? While the party's rhetoric might take one approach, their actions seem to take quite another. In fact, there was an almost airtight formula for finding out what Sinn Féin's policy is going to be on any given issue. I call it Mary Lou's Law. Here's how it works in a nutshell. You take whatever the government policy is, and then you multiply it by 2, and that's Sinn Féin's policy. Now, I know that might seem strange at first, but allow me to demonstrate. Let's take an issue like climate change as an example. Many people in rural Ireland are deeply annoyed at the government's climate action bill because it puts huge pressure on farming communities, household heating bills, petrol costs, and so on. But what is Sinn Féin's policy on the climate action bill? Opposition slams revised climate bill as a betrayal of the Green movement. Both Sinn Féin and People Before Profit TDs have hit out at the lack of ambition in the bill. It lacks ambition, as in it doesn't go far enough. It should be more radical and more extreme again. In other words, as per Mary Lou's Law, Sinn Féin's climate policy equals the government's climate policy times 2. They agree with the green goal, they just want more of it. Take an issue like illegal immigration. The government wants to reward 17,000 illegal migrants who have broken Irish immigration law with a pathway to citizenship. These are people who have metaphorically hopped the fence into our country with no legal right to be here whatsoever. To give them amnesty is to make a mockery of our laws and reduce our border to Swiss cheese. So what is Sinn Féin's policy on this issue? Well, they want to give amnesty not to 17,000 illegal immigrants like the government, but 26,000. In other words, again, Sinn Féin's immigration policy equals the government's immigration policy times 2. They're happy to give amnesty to illegal migrants, they just wish it was given to even more of them. Or take an issue like little children changing their gender. The government wants to allow little children under the age of 16 to change their gender with parental consent. Sinn Féin wants to let children under 16 change their gender without parental consent. Exact same policy, just a more extreme version of it. Take minimum alcohol pricing. The government says, we're bringing in massive price hikes on alcohol across the Republic of Ireland. What does Sinn Féin say? Yeah, minimum alcohol pricing is great, but why stop at the Republic? We want it in Northern Ireland as well. On the 12.5% corporation tax rate, the government said it was the right decision to raise it. But if you ask Sinn Féin, we didn't even have a decision. Pierce Doherty said that we have no choice at all, and doing anything else would tarnish our reputation. The government want COVID restrictions like lockdown? Well, Sinn Féin is given out to them saying, why don't you do more restrictions? There aren't enough. Take the COVID certs, for example, where Sinn Féin TDs were giving out in the Dáil at the lack of compliance with them.
What sanctions are there for businesses in food and hospitality that are non-compliant? And also, would you support the call for the helpline whereby members of the public who don't feel safe in an environment where they see that COVID passes aren't being checked or other health guidelines are not being adhered to. Would you support that call?
The government wants abortion, Sinn Féin wants more abortion. The government likes RTE and doesn't want to defund them, Sinn Féin likes RTE and doesn't want to defund them, etc, etc. On basically any issue that is of importance to our country, Sinn Féin's answer seems to be, we want exactly what the government is doing, but we want more of it and we want it quicker. So to put it another way, Sinn Féin believes in the government's agenda more than the government does. The reasoning here seems to be that one dose of this medicine almost killed the patient, so better give him double the dose and see if that improves anything. It doesn't really logically follow, does it? Why would we accelerate and double down on ideas which have been failing for a decade and leading to mass discontent? Surely the answer to these problems is to start reversing these disastrous decisions and undoing them, not upping the ante. Is this what you would call opposition or change? Does opposing somebody mean you agree with them on basically everything and you just wish they'd do more of their current agenda? If your mom cooks you a delicious apple pie and you absolutely adore it and your only complaint is you wish she'd bake more often, would you say you oppose your mom's cooking? Well, I don't think so. Underneath the spectacle of all the screaming and shouting in the doll, at a certain point it starts to feel like nothing more than theatrics and a big show. Mary Lou has already said in the past multiple times over the years that she'd be open to the idea of going into coalition with the government, and apparently the feeling is mutual. And sure, look, at the end of the day, why not? What important fundamental value do they actually disagree on at the end of the day? LGBTQ plus social issues and liberalism, mass open borders immigration, Black Lives Matter and woke racial identity politics, COVID restrictions, climate change, radical feminism. They agree on basically everything. The issues they differ on are all surface level froth and minutiae and clearly just contrived to keep up the appearance of disagreement. 21st century Irish politics suffers from an illusion, the illusion of choice. As voters, we dutifully enter the voting booth every few years and we see all these traditional parties listed thinking we have this wide menu to select from. But many of us fail to realise that virtually all of those parties hold the same views on almost everything. It's often been said in the past that Ireland has a 2.5 party system, but that's totally false. It's a one-party system and only one woke liberal left way of thinking is allowed. When these lads say we're all in this together, they definitely aren't joking. Please like and share this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider signing up for a monthly donation via the link on screen to help us produce more content like this. Alternative media like Gript needs all the assistance it can get, and every donation goes a long way. As always, thanks for watching.